This is Courage Barbell. I'm your host, Chad Ikes. Good morning, all of you hundreds of listeners out there. Today's podcast, or YouTube, whatever you want to call this, is going to be a little bit different. So let me just start. Here's the deal. I wore my Ed Coan Open Your Taint. I think I just felt myself up. T-shirt yesterday, which you need to go to couragebarbell.com and pick up one of these and maybe a couple other ones too, and some stickers, and look back for water bottles and all that shit. But wearing this shirt yesterday really got me on a train of thought about how none of us really make it to the top alone. That we all have people that influenced us and help us. And looking back at a sport with such history and how all these legends in the sport and all these people have influenced the sport, and how that's what really keeps the sport growing. And like everybody that comes in with some new training concepts or ideas and they progress, we all kind of owe a little bit to all these other people. And then very sadly, I had heard that Louie Simmons passed away yesterday. And that's just another huge person in the sport. So I thought I'd just do a little podcast talking about this and what some of these people meant to me, which is a little difficult. So those of you that don't know Louie Simmons and don't know Westside Barbell need to look it up. I can't give you the straight facts on anything. You know, Louie started Westside way back in Culver City, California, I believe, with nickname was Peanuts. I can't think of his name. It ended up moving to Columbus, Ohio, where Westside started this huge dominance in powerlifting and maintained it for a long time. When I first started and became big, it was Westside, like Westside Barbell. If you saw Westside at a competition, you're like, oh shit. Because you knew they were going to have all these top lifters. And, you know, Louie expanded this into strength for, he was meeting with NFL football teams, Division I colleges. He was working with some fighters, some track athletes. Like the things that he was coming up with and making were helping strength sports as a whole. It just happened to be his main focus was on powerlifting, and when Westside Barbell was just at that time cranking out just tons of unbelievable lifters. And so when I started coming up and realized, I mean, everybody knows I did most of my stuff through Elite FTS, Dave Tate, Jim Wendler. But those were guys, you know, Dave Tate kind of came up and spent a lot of time at Westside with Louie, and, you know, and then Dave took it and expanded on it. So I learned a lot of the Westside conjugate type theories coming up. And as I got bigger and bigger, I got to meet more and more people. And eventually I got to meet Louie and got to talk to Louie, which was a huge honor. And then he actually invited me to come move to Columbus and train at Westside, which, as much as that was such an honor, was not the path I knew that I needed to take. Had developed my own team and knew that my path was not a path of being at somebody else's gym, but was a path I needed to make myself. Still, it was awesome to meet Louie and talk to Louie. It was awesome to be able to go to Westside pretty much whenever I wanted and, you know, talk to Louie and get to have meals with Louie and just bounce ideas off of him. And just sitting down and listening to Louie talk was like just tons of information rolling in, and you'd be thinking about it for days afterwards. So even though he didn't have I can't say, oh, I'm a West Side athlete. Louie did all this for me. He didn't, but he helped me out a ton, and he was a huge influence in what I was doing and the route that my training was going. And if I was getting stuck, he was a guy I could talk to, get some more ideas to keep moving forward and gaining what I needed to gain. So Louie still had this major impact in me achieving the level that I achieved, and becoming one of the best super heavyweight powerlifters of the time, especially a time when Westside was dominant too. So that was cool, and it always meant a lot to me. Still does. And then even outside of Louie, like Louie created, like I think sometimes people get too wrapped up in one focus, which is good, but there's expansions too. So like people talk about Louie and it's like, well, it wasn't just about Louie. Like look at what Louie created. Look at the people that he brought together. Look at the information that came out of that. I mean, you got guys like George Halbert who also had a huge impact. Like I don't even know George that well, but like getting his VHS tape and listening to it and then getting to talk to him at some competitions. Like I gained so much just from that little bit. And he went to Westside. He started training under Louie. He got his team. He expanded. Like you can kind of take that all back to Louie and Westside. And guys like Chuck Vogelpool and Matt Wenning and like all these guys learned so much from Louie and then expanded on it and took it further. But you got to give Louie some credit for having Westside and doing that. And even Louie, where did Louie get his information? Louie always talked about the Eastern Bloc and how he learned so much from their stuff, but he took their stuff and then expanded on that. And then he pulled guys in like Dave Tate. And then Dave Tate helped him expand on that. And then Dave Tate expanded on that. But you got to give the guy credit who created this gym and organism that kept creating other things. And it all kept coming out and expanding and like that. My main training throughout my career that I still train people with today, and there's a couple programs that I really like, but I still go back to Conjugate. And Conjugate to me is that same, Westside Conjugate is that same type of deal that Westside was. And I've talked to Louie, Westside Conjugate for me was an outline. It was a principles that I needed to take and then bend to what I needed as an individual lifter. And the more I was around Westside and met Westside guys and became friends with Westside guys, they all had their own little tweaks. They all did their own little things. And so it was that whole thing, and that was basically the foundation of my success. Was starting out with that program and those principles and being able to bend them and then being able to talk to Louie and ask Louie questions was huge. And Louie was always, you'd go to a meet, man, Louie was always talking to somebody, always helping people out, always so enthusiastic about lifting and strength training. And he's going to be a major loss to this sport. And, you know, legends never die, but people like me need to help keep that legend alive. And I will always give Louie tons of credit for what I achieved. I don't think anybody truly makes it alone. We all have someone to thank, someone that we learned from, moving up. All right. So now I want to talk about Ed Coan. And for you younger lifters that are coming up in this sport, spend a little time and go back and look at where the sport came from and look at the people that progressed it to the level it's at now. There's so much information in there coming up that was developed that led to where it is. But a lot of that information, somebody new could come back and read an article from Louie and see a different twist that nobody's actually ever done. So, like, that's when I say legends never die. Like, the information that he has could still affect the next great lifter, or it could help the next great lifting coach come up with a new principle based on what he read from Louie's. So it's very important to always look at the past and see those things and keep those legends alive. But when I was wearing my Ed Coan shirt that you guys know are going to go buy, I was thinking about Eddie and the impact that Eddie had on me through my lifting. And even before I ever met him, he had a huge impact on it. I remember always looking up to him because he was so consistent and so dominant in so many different body weights. And from a young age to, I don't know, 40-something probably, he was still dominant. And so I was always watching and reading about him, and it was kind of motivated me to want to reach that level. And then I bought his first VHS training tape, and that shows how old I am. And I just remember watching that tape, and I'm like, holy shit, like he's so strong in everything he does. But I remember thinking, my God, it's the same. If he's behind the neck pressing 135 or 405, it's exactly the same. I go, if he's warming up with 135 in a squat or doing 1,000, it's exactly the same. And like that sunk in deep with me, like, holy shit, like I need to get that, I need to be that consistent. And I know from other sports that consistency was important. So it kind of helped me start looking at powerlifting from an athletic standpoint, not a meathead standpoint. And it spurred my drive, intellect to want to become a great technician, which I believe I did, and to understand the body and how it should move and how can I make my body so efficient I can lift more weight. And that all came from him. And then as I got better and better and I started meeting better and better people and I was going to bigger and bigger meets, I ended up getting to meet Ed Cohen. And for me, if you're super strong, I will give you the respect because I know how hard it was to get there. But if you're super, super strong and you're just a shitty person, my respect is going to stop at your strength level. And it means a lot to me that people are good people and quality people, and Ed Cohen was both. He's a great guy and a great lifter. Actually, the first time I met him, I was working at this stupid supplement company's booth at the Arnold Classic, and I'm talking to the girls and just hanging out, doing whatever the hell they want me to do. And I see Ed Cohen walking down this aisle. And I'm like, I'm having this conversation in my head. I'm like, holy shit, that's Ed Cohen. And I kind of keep watching him out of the corner of my eye. And I'm like, holy shit, is he coming over here? Like, dude, that's Ed Cohen, man. And he walks like right up to me and he's like, hey, Chad, are you lifting this weekend? And I'm like, in my head, I'm just like, holy fuck. Ed Cohen knows my name. And so we get to talking, a little bit and like, what a great dude, man. And like that was my first experience meeting him. And of course, as soon as he left, I'm on my phone texting my handler who's there. And I'm like, dude, Ed Cohen just came up to me and he knows my name, which was cool. And so then we became friends and I had opportunities to coach some seminars at Elite FTS with him. I had, we've been out to eat and just to sit with somebody of that level and talk about training is just so amazing because I don't even know if Eddie realizes it, but like there's so many little things that he will say that in my mind are huge. Like I picked him up and it's like, man, like it's just running in my head for days and days and days, like trying to really grab the importance of it. And it's great to get to know someone that you look up to, as a person and a human and find out like, damn, he's really a good dude. That's cool. Because I've had the flip side of that too. I've had some people I looked up to that I met, and it was like, wow, that was a huge letdown. But So the things that I learned through Eddie in his tape and from some of the articles he's done, and then from getting to meet him, and like even some of the smallest things that he said at times, like rang so true with me in training. And they're things that I still think about to this day. And it's I don't even know how to describe it. Like, again, I put up at the time. I think I reached in powerlifting USA. I can't remember if I got 1 or 2. Honestly, I know I was 2. I thought I hit 1 in one of the top 100s. And because one time, like the highest number was Andy Bolton, and I was second, which would have made me first in USAPL's top 100. I put up like the 4th highest total in history, one of the highest squats in history. I think I'm still in the top 10. But I wouldn't have done that. I wouldn't have achieved that if it hadn't been for guys like Louie, for guys like Dave, for guys like Ed Coan, and just all these different guys that I looked up to. And then that list even goes bigger. That list goes to the guys I was lifting with and hanging out in the lobby before a competition and talking and just picking up all these little bitty tips here and there and there and there and there, and then putting them all together. Like none of us get to the top alone. And if somebody tells you they got to the top alone, I'm going to call bullshit. If you read an article, if you did anything, you have someone that you should thank for helping you get to where you are. I have a lot of guys. Like powerlifting for me was one of the first sports where I actually went, man, I don't know enough. And I put myself on this journey of learning that is still going on to this day. Like there's so much information out there. Even after I stopped competing, Kabuki strength has been a huge influence on me and taught me so many more things that I go, shit, what if I would have known this 10 or 15 years ago? Because the information keeps expanding. And that's why it's important to keep looking back at the past and knowing where people came from. And can I take some of that knowledge and put a new tweak on it? And how did the sport get to where it's at? Right now we have a big raw movement in powerlifting, and the guys are like doing numbers raw now that like 20 years ago you were like, no way. And even with the gear, we got guys bench pressing insane amounts of weight. And I know the gear changes as well, which is going to be in addition to that, but I don't give a shit. If anybody who's ever tried to hold, well, I'm not going to say, there's guys doing 11, 12, I think 1,400 pounds. Just holding that in your hands on your radius and your ulna is insane. And all that came from the guys in the past that keep expanding and bending it. And I have guys to thank that were in the past before me. And I've had people say that I helped them, which is a huge honor. But it just keeps growing, and it keeps expanding and getting better. And I think it's important that we go all the way back to like Louie Sear and go, what did these guys do? What did Paul Anderson do? How did he do it? And continue to learn from what they did and not forget that information and keep those legends alive. So I think I'm going to end it right there. Please like this channel. Please subscribe to this channel. Please share this channel. I'm hoping to make this grow. I want to be able to do this more. I would get up, if I could get up every morning and shoot a video, that would be awesome. Please go to my Instagram, Chad Ikes, and follow that. Please go to couragebarbell.com. Get some Courage Barbell apparel. I got more stuff. I'm working on stuff all the time. It's just with making a living and everything else, it takes me a while to get it all up. Please go to chadanddoug.com, which is also couragebarbell.com, but that's a side thing where you can't be super intense all the time. You got to have some fun, and you can't be about strength all the time, so you got to pay attention to what's going on in the world a little bit. And that kind of is my outlet with a buddy of mine to make really stupid t-shirts that make me laugh and to kind of express some of my frustration with the world and to deal with all that kind of stuff. So check that out. I got a couple new t-shirts coming out there soon. And that's it. I'm going to let you guys go. I hope everyone has a great weekend. And I am out of here.